Okay, so there are more interesting things than having sex with a garbage disposal.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to your favorite new podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. The way I said it in the last video bugged the crap out of me. Like, I heard myself say it, and I was like, wow, you stumbled on that. So I tried really hard this time, guys. Welcome back for the next episode of our Hyperion read. Today we are reading The Soldier's Tale. For those of you who are here and didn't watch our other Hyperion video, we're reading Dan Simmons' Hyperion. One story at a time, one tale at a time. Last time we read the first one, which was The Priest's Tale, which we all really enjoyed. It scarred Will.
It was not that scarring.
I'm scarred. I still think about Paul Duray on that tree living and dying for 7 years.
He was looking for fan art and he can't find anything that captures the of the moment. So
what makes you think in any world that this book in particular would have fan art of that particular moment?
It does. There's some art of it.
Oh, absolutely it does. This is, oh man.
Of him being on a tree? Wait, you found fan art of him on the tree?
It's not very good, though. You can't really see what's going on. And it's like, that's not horrible enough. Anyway, so to go into it a little bit, the Hyperion Cantos, which is this is the first book of Hyperion, it's told in a series of 5 stories told by the characters who are on a pilgrimage to a planet called Hyperion, and specifically to the time tombs that are guarded by an alien construct that's basically just a bunch of living blades of carnage called the Shrike, who we actually get to meet for real in this tale, and it is pretty metal. You see the pun I did there because he is metal?
It's
good job.
Stellar. Great joke.
You should just throw up right now like some pictures of the Shrike. I realized we didn't do that last time.
Here, I'll draw the Shrike for us. Continue.
Katie wrote her fantastic artistic interpretation of the Shrike. I am ready for this.
I already know which exact moment in the story she's going to illustrate.
I hope I know. There's one story, which means she can't show it until we get there because you don't expect it, but it comes for you. I mentioned in our first video that each of the tales has a different flavor. The first one was definitely creepy horror. We all felt that it did a real good job encapsulating that. And this tale is kind of like action, military escapades, and sex. Some sexual romancing. And it comes at you kind of out of nowhere. But before we go into that, what did you guys think of The Soldier's Tale?
Ooh, let me tell you. First of all, I think I almost, I did not enjoy it more than The Priest's Tale. But let me just tell you, there were balls a slapping. You might have forgot it last time, but now you remember, don't you?
I don't know if I would have described it as ball slapping.
Ladies, as the resident expert on balls.
Are you sure?
There were not that. Oh boy, how much of this am I going to have to cut out?
Who is the true expert?
So much.
But that's not my point, who the best expert is. I would say William is not the expert.
Unfortunately, all of this has to be cut. None of this can go in the video. It was hysterical. Anyway, continuing, Katie.
You asked me how I felt about it, right?
Yes.
I loved it. I thought it was equally as satisfying as The Priest's Tale. The reason I say that, but in a completely different way. It's not at all the same. Completely different tone, very militaristic, very more like biographical in a weird way. A lot more like, ooh, adventure in space. And also more like, not politics, but like what the structure of their military might look like. So, politics. I really like Fenmod Kasad, our main character in this tale. Continue now from there, William.
I will say that I did not think this one was as good as The Priest's Tale, but I enjoyed it so much more. Not just because there wasn't someone living and dying for 7 years on a pain tree, but also because I am at heart a military historical nerd. Like, I just love military history a lot. And so military fiction is kind of an outgrowth of that. And like, as I was reading this, I was like, oh man, I forgot how much I missed that. Because in this, this channel or podcast of ours, we mostly have and are going to read like YA girl books is pretty much the genre, which I don't mind. Like, I'm one of the people who picked most of the books, but like, I love military history, and this really this hit the spot. And I thought it was a lot of fun too. I really enjoyed it. But I don't think it's as good as The Priest's Tale, because that is just a horrific tale. And the other thing is, I do think this is a very good second story to go, because it broadens the world in a very organic way and sets up things, and like now we understand who the ousters are more and more of the political situation without it feeling like preaching. So I really appreciated that about it as well. Maria, both what did you think the first time you read it and now the second time?
So I actually enjoyed it more, I think, the second time than I did the first time, because I backed those motherfuckers. I went straight from first story right into the second tale, and I was still so affected by The Priest's Tale that it was a little bit hard. It took me until about halfway through this tale, pretty much once he was on Spaceship Hospital. From that point on, I was like, oh man, I am fucking invested. But prior to that, I'd been a little like, I was mourning Father Paul Duray, and to be thrown straight into the summarized history of Fedmon Kassad was a little bit much for me at the time. And this time, because I had that break between it, I was much more able to really enjoy it. A lot of the things that stood out to me the first time, I enjoyed even more. Like the opening, how it opens, I think is just absolutely fantastic, and as a reader really like fun but disorienting for a second. I definitely love The Priest's Tale more. We talk about, like I mentioned at the end of the first video, that I have a ranking for how these tales, like, for me stack up, and this is definitely, I would say, under The Priest's Tale. I acknowledge that The Priest's Tale is a better story, but I also, because it impacted me so much, I think I enjoyed it a little bit more. So I'm kind of like in between you and Katie, where I wouldn't say they're equal, but I wouldn't say like I enjoyed this one more. The Priest's Tale is hard to beat.
Also, I will say that the portion of we get before the tale of them on Hyperion, I actually really liked. I thought that was really well done. I thought there was really good atmosphere. And again, we get some like teases about who the consul is and his history. And I really enjoyed that part as well.
Wait, are you guys talking about the beginning part before the narrative?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I really loved that part. So how classic was the bar scene?
So good. So
like,
classic.
They have a whole, it really does set the tone, and it makes Hyperion a little less alien. It's because it shows like, it's almost like in a weird way, I don't know if I want to say medieval, but, you know, you've got the Shrike's Temple, which has been decimated, very haunting. And actually, it was kind of haunting. The pictures, again, were very vivid. And then they go into a bar, and it's warm, and there's, like, not mead, but, like, whatever their version of mead is. And there's, like, the crackling of, like, socialness and all this shit. And
I love too that Braun Lamia was like, do you need help beating people up? I'll just volunteer.
Again,
like
classic.
Braun Lamia she's from Lussus, which is a planet that has high, like, the gravity is real, the pressure's more than you get on other planets. So the people on Lussus are shorter and stockier and stronger, and Braun Lamia is like a PI. So, like, bitch came to play.
Yeah.
But so to kind of get the party started, I'm gonna go ahead and couch you guys in what's happening in the story. So you start off, they land on Hyperion, and they get out of the consul's ship, and immediately there are like Marines that are going fanboy for Colonel Fedmon Kassad, and they're like, oh, we didn't know you'd be here. And he's like, at ease, soldiers. They realize that there are crowds of people around this landing. It's not a space
landing zone.
It's the tarmac.
The tarmac. And there's a ton of people. And they're like, why is there so many people? And then out pops, oh God, what's his name?
Just think of a very attractive circle glasses kind of Milo from Atlantis vibe, but really
Theo Lane. No, do you know what I picture? Hux from the First Order.
Oh, I could see that.
Tall, redheaded, skinny.
Star Wars. I mean, I try to block
Who's
out anything
Hux?
having to do with the new Star Wars trilogy.
He's the redheaded.
Oh, I should know. I read porn of him. Yes.
And what you begin to realize more is that the consul had been the consul and like the person in charge of Hyperion for a while, and Hyperion is like under the protection of the like government, but not actually part. So he wasn't like a governor, but he was just like the guy in charge. Theo Lane took over that position when he left, and at first he sees Theo and he just sees him as like the young guy in his head, and then he's like, oh shit, Theo, you're the guy in charge. And he's like, I'm not just the guy in charge, I'm like Governor General now. fancy.
We should say that the reason for the whole pilgrimage to begin with and all the reason everyone's trying to leave is that the ousters are coming to invade the planet. And we'll meet the ousters more later in Fedman Kazad's story because they're a big part of it. Basically, there are humans who have lived in 0G so long that their limbs are like gangly, they can't live in normal gravity, and they're really the only outside power of the hegemony. They're like the barbarians at the gate.
Yeah, and they don't live on planets. They live in between the stars, and so they have like clusters of ships that are their home. Like they have agriculture clusters of ships, so they're just not on a home planet.
I think if any of you guys have watched the show, shoot, I'm forgetting the name of it.
The Expanse?
The Expanse. Think of, I don't remember their proper names, but the people who... like the detective dude, he had like really weak bones. It's
the
because
people
he was
who
in
lived
space.
on the meteorites, the meteors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So think that kind of thing, but also think like super Mad Maxy cobbled together things and warrior people with tails.
Theo basically explains that all these people are here because they're trying to get off world. So anytime someone lands, they're like, "Take us with you," and Theo's got to get them because it's really hard to like get through the streets right now, so he takes them in and he basically tells the consul, "Don't fucking go. What are you doing? You don't need to go to the Shrike Temple. I'm having a political crisis right now. You're the best like guy we ever had in this position. Help me." He's like, "Why are you gonna go kill yourself? Like, I need you. Don't die. Your life would be wasted." You also find out, so I mentioned in the last video that the Shrike had been pretty much like kept around the Time Tunes and like the old capital, and that's like the Shrike's stomping ground. But ever since the anti-entropic field started going out of whack because the Time Tunes are opening, the Shrike can go everywhere. He's on the other continents. He's just killing people left, right, and center. There's like a bajillion people injured because they keep like panicking and mobbing each other. Hyperion's in a state of absolute fucking disarray. Theo is like, "Please, just don't do it." And he's like, "I'm sorry, Theo, you're a good guy, but I have to. We've got to do this." And Theo basically gives everyone an out. He's like, "Listen, just come and stay. Like, you can stay at the consulate. It's fine." And they're like, "Nope."
I got more of the sense that like it was the consul, he's flagellating himself for some tragic past we don't know about. So it's almost more like he's like, "No, I don't deserve to do that. I made mistakes last time."
Yeah, I got that vibe as well.
And there's a part where Theo says, "And just because of what happened when you were here last time, you don't know yet what it is. We will find out eventually." Because again, all the in-between scenes are from the point of view of the consul. He's our narrator. They go to the Shrike Temple, and as Katie said, it's an arresting description. It's been burned. It's been gutted. What's been happening is all over the hegemony, they have been rebelling against the Shrike Temple and people doing the pilgrimage. And because all of this stuff is going bad and the Shrike is killing tons of people, they're just attacking all of it. And so nowhere is it worse than on Hyperion itself. So the Shrike Temple was taken down. All the priests and everything got out through tunnels. What do? They were supposed to meet the people at the Shrike Temple, and this happened while they were traveling. I mentioned last time that the time debt is 7 years, and the Shrike Temple was burned 3 years ago. So while they were traveling, their destination got burnt. And so they looked at it, and they're like, "What are we going to do?" And then Martin Silenus is like, "I know a bar.
I know an old haunt where we can drink and feast upon nice salted meats." And so they go to this bar, and
you also learn that this is also the consul's old drinking spot, because he's a little bit of an alcoholic. Especially, you get a beautiful scene where he's like, "I would drink all night, and then Theo would like sober me up in the morning." It's amazing. He was good at his job. They walk in, the barkeep's like, "You're a ghost." And the barkeep is this massive, fun character that you see for like just a scene, but he's great.
Doesn't the audio also have like a vaguely Russian accent when he speaks?
It's Fedman Kasad's voice actor. It's the same voice actor.
But he puts on like this kind of weird,
like he has an accent.
He has the big gruff dude accent that you always get in a bar.
He also, his grandfather owned this bar and knows Martin Silenus. So it's again one of those moments where you're like, the poet Martin Silenus is very old. Basically, the bar is absolutely, which is 6 stories. It's like an inn/bar. It's 6 stories, completely filled with soldiers from the government and also people like refugees from Hyperion itself. So there's like no place to go. So then the barkeep's like, I'll throw out some people that are at this one place. And Braun Lamia, this is the part where she's like, you need help throwing those people out? And he's like, sure, short, stocky lady. I'll take your help. And they sit down and they're talking. And then all of a sudden a voice beckons. And they look and it is a blue-skinned man. And if you're blue-skinned, you're an android. His name is Abetic. And he's like, quick, you must come with me now. And they're like, are you from the Shrike Temple? And he's like, God damn it, shut the fuck up, you guys. Like, people are getting killed. Like,
and he says several times, he says 3 times, shut up, come with me. Now, granted, if somebody just walked up to you in a hood and was like, shut up and come with me, how willing would you be to go with them?
But
if he was a cybrid.
We're also making Abetic is very polite. Like, so as much as, like, he is telling them to shut up and come with him, but it's in a very polite manner. He's an awesome dude. Abetic takes them to a barge, and they're gonna go down the Huli River to the grass, the Sea of Grass, and that's how they're gonna get to the time tombs. They go to sleep the next morning. He wakes up and they realize this craft is from, like, this barge is from old Earth. It somehow ended up on Hyperion. And then Martin Silenus is like, okay, we're all here. Time for a tale. And they were like, weren't we gonna do dinner? Saul Weintraub is like, well, seeing as there are 7 of us and we aren't actually going to be traveling for 7 days, we can't do 7 dinners. So, let's go. It's Fedmon Kassad's turn to tell a story, and we launch into his story, and his is told very differently from the Priest's Tale. The Priest's Tale was journals that Hoyt read to them. Fedmon Kassad's is told to you in third person, so it's not even Fedmon or Kassad going, I did this and that. It's third person, and it opens on the Battle of fucking Agincourt, which, for those of you who don't know, was Henry V and France were at war.
At very first, you're like, I do not understand what is currently happening in this book. And then you very quickly cotton on and you're like, it is a battle simulation. He is in the military. This probably exists in the future. So then there we go.
I thought originally what it was is like he was going to end up being not a time traveler, but like that was where he started and he somehow got like sucked into the future time or something. But
that
that would have been weird since he's a Muslim Palestinian.
I was just going to point that out.
Maybe he converted. Well, at that point, I didn't know.
I mean, you don't, because I also was like, this was a long time ago, guys. And you realize, and the narration tells you that this is a simulation. And at first you're like, okay, it doesn't matter if you get shot. But apparently, if you're injured within the sim, you can like damage or heart attack yourself to death.
The anxiety of dying.
Yeah, when they take you out of the creche. And it's the battle, and he is an archer, and you learn that this is part of their training. They pick different battles that had key moments in military history so that you can learn from it. And so he is a longbow archer, and they have a really great moment where they discuss how this was the end of like chivalric knight warfare, because France and all its knights on horseback were defeated by a bunch of like English peasants with longbows.
One thing I want to talk about is the way that Dan Simmons writes, because this is the part where I really realized it was in this battle, and me and Maria have talked about it, is that he writes in a way where he tends to tie in a lot of almost philosophical musings into his descriptions and his prose, but not in a way that sounds pretentious or purple in terms of purple prose. So I actually wanted to read a little bit because I think this paragraph is a good example of how he does this. It's one sentence, and note how it moves from the more abstract to the more concrete detail within it. Horses, it turned out, were too smart to willingly impale themselves upon stakes, no matter how hard their human riders implored them to do so. But the second and third waves of cavalry did not stop as abruptly as the first, and in a single mad moment horses were down and screaming. Riders were thrown and screaming, and Kassad was out and screaming, rushing at every downed Frenchman he could see, wielding a mallet on the prostrate form where he could, slashing through gaps in armor with his long knife when it was too crowded to swing the mallet. So we start with something that's like more
conceptual,
philosophical. Horses are too smart to run into stakes. And then we end it with the very concrete details of him driving his knife into people. And there's a couple other points like that. And throughout Kassad's story, he does that a lot. More than I think he did in the Priest's Tale, because it's more of a
narrative.
And so like that's one of the things that makes his writing really sing, I think. And was one of the reasons he's able to get away sometimes with some of his bigger ideas.
What I really enjoyed in this particular section is the same exact thing that you're mentioning. I also noticed it, we're not going to talk about it in this episode, but there's going to be a future story where God, his language gets so rich and beautiful
Which
and
tale?
poetic. The next one.
Martin Silenus is a beautiful narrator.
Oh, Lord help me. It romanced me so far. But anyway, it was a wonderful change in tone. I think it was a very intelligent idea on his part to start with a journal entry. It's because that's so specific. We have first person, we have a lot of emotion impact, a lot of like explanation and narration, and we get a lot
and
of
not necessarily blow by blow.
Exactly.
And characterization. I always find that first person, like everything they say is a characterization to the point where I actually feel like it's a little bit cheap sometimes to write in first person, because then mistakes or bad descriptions are like, oh, that's a character choice, that they're not very descriptive.
It's a common joke to say that, especially in in creative writing classes, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed the switch and focus as well, right? So we had a religious focus in the previous one and like a meaning of life, what it means to repent, finding truth. And now in this one, immediately we get just pure, unadulterated violence.
And this leads us to the next common theme of this story. Sex. So
ball slapping sex.
And you might be thinking to yourself, reader, how do we transition from the Battle of Agincourt to sex? Well, first off, you don't. It happens during the battle. There's a knight that has dropped off horseback, and it's basically him and these two other guys that are chasing him, the two other dudes, and he doesn't know if they're part of the sim or if they're other like soldiers who are simming in. He doesn't know. But then it's just him and this knight, and he's chasing the knight, and then he realizes he's made a tactical error. At some point, this knight is going to remember that he's stronger and he's got a long sword, and this is just a dude with a knife chasing him. And the knight does realize it. He turns, he's fighting Cassad, and then all of a sudden, the guy gets whacked over the head by a woman, and Cassad is like, "What you doing here, woman lady?" And they beat the dude to death, and then they're looking at each other, and there's like an electric moment, and you could perhaps read this moment as insta-love, or you can read it as insta-infatuation, and she touches him.
And then it's an instant sexual urge. Oh, I loved this scene. It reminiscent of good old days of our bodice ripper moment.
It is a bodice, except it's her kind of ripping his butt. Like, she definitely instigated this. This was a woman who knew what she wanted.
I'm very curious, and we'll discuss this later. I'll write it down right now. I'm very curious as to how she located him and what the motive is at the end of this. But yeah, so she's this curly, beautiful haired woman, and she undresses.
Short. She's got an angled bob.
Okay, fine. Short, straight.
Women and their haircuts,
that you
guys.
remember. Anyway, they are engaging in coitus,
and it's a scene.
After so many Ice Planet Barbarians, I was actually weirded out a little bit when it just cut to black past a certain point, and I was like, "Oh my god, what? Like they're not going to describe this in painful and lurid detail? What is this technique?
What is this?" In comparison to Ice Planet Barbarians, Simmons is a much better writer, but I don't love the way Simmons writes sex scenes.
It is very overdramatic.
I don't know. It's the way, like, there's this one part where she's on top and she's reaching behind her, like, and the way he describes, like, male genitalia brushing up against pubic hair a lot, and I'm just like, you can tell that.
Here's what it is that he writes in a way where sex is a little bit gross almost, but also from a kind of male gaze side of things. So it feels weirdly, not exploitive exactly, but weirdly like lurid and a little gross, which I actually think kind of works.
Carnal is what you're looking for.
More gross though, because it's like, it's sort of combined with this, like you can tell he's a 40-year-old white man. Like, I don't know why, but like I can feel that in the prose. And like, I think it more or less works okay in this story. Like, I don't think it's too much of a problem. No. But I've read Ilium, which is another book of his, where it's like even more on display and weird.
For me, it was Rise of Endymion, which is the fourth book in the Hyperion Cantos. And, oh man, let me tell you, there was a sex scene used in 0G.
Ah, that's great.
A blowjob was done upside down, and I was like, with what's happening in the narrative, I don't want this right now. Like, this is not what I hope for. But anyway, I don't love Simmons, but he isn't bad. Like, I'm not saying he's terrible at writing sex. It's just, for me, not one of my favorites. It's not like, literally, Katie was like, ball slapping, and I was like, what? I had literally forgotten. I remembered there was a woman who was very captivating, but I'd forgotten the sex. But yeah, so there's this sex scene, and it's great, and then he wakes up out of the simulation, and he's like, what about that forest? And they were like, you shouldn't have been able to go into the forest. Nothing existed outside of the battlefield. And he was like, okay.
I'll keep this to myself. This lurid affair I will keep to myself.
And then what ends up happening is every time, or not every time, but a lot of the time when he goes into Sims, this woman is there. And a couple times he asks her for her name, and she just like will touch him tenderly on the cheek and doesn't say anything. And you get like, they have sex in Nam. They have sex during like, I don't know if it was the American Revolution, but it was one battle in America. They're all over the map.
And then also battles that are yet to come, which I want to just point out real quick. I love Dan Simmons' usage of his own like past historical events, so that way it actually feels like it actually happened.
But like it transitions seamlessly from him listing battles that you know actually happened, and some you like probably actually happened but you didn't know, and then suddenly he's saying things and you're like, was that a battle that actually happened, or am I now in a period that I do not know? And so it's fantastic. But like him and this lady who he calls Mystery in his head, which was just,
yeah, I know. That's what you call a cat.
It's like, it's a young, horny soldier's romantic horse. It's a young, horny soldier's romantic notion. Like, she was a woman of mystery. Like I buy it. I buy young Fedmon Kassad
so
being
funny.
Like, she's the woman of mystery in my life.
And he does look for her on the campus of the military and in other military places, but he can't find an actual student. And what we find out about the simulations is that, because he like bribes a coder to figure out what's going on with the simulations, is that they're almost like a collective unconscious gestalt of what people remember about it or something like that. They're tied into the greater human consciousness somehow, so there's an actual possibility that she is real somewhere,
because it's also connected to the all thing and like the like AI and all, like basically like it's an intense internet and it uses that thing to power these Sims.
I at first thought that she was an embodiment of it, and I was wondering where that was gonna go, but
yeah, it's gonna go some interesting places, guys, don't worry. But yeah, so he's looking for her, he can't find her, and eventually he has his last Sim, and he's like, man, I guess this was it, and he just carries that in his heart. But eventually, once he starts going into like active duty, he'll have like dreams or moments in between like awake and asleep where he'll feel her presence, and then she starts visiting him in dreams and in moments like that. So he's like, man, is this woman in my head or not? And he's having this crisis. Meanwhile, behind all this stuff about the mystery woman, you get to see his like military journey. You find out that he's originally from Mars, from like a slum, like not really great, and you either went into like the gangs or you joined the military, because on Mars there's three cool things. It's hunting, this other thing, and the military school.
It is also mentioned that due to his religion, which in the past also Dan Simmons provides Islam's own journey into the future and how it falls.
We'll need to talk about that.
Oh, interesting. Anyway, this is part of the effects of his people's like...
Eventually, Palestinians tried finding a home in space, and so like they took Mars, and that desert planet is where they ended up, descendants from those people that came from old Earth on Mars. As a Martian, he's a little bit thinner, more wiry than people who lived under Standard G, or like the people from Lussus who are much stockier. But eventually, through the course of his travels, he ends up stationed on Lussus, and he gets beefy boy. But you learn that like he had a really like convoluted, like originally he was just kind of volunteering, and he had to beg someone to let him into the military school, and then he got there. And one of the first cool things that he does, and I really love it, was the oh my god, what was it called? Qumriyad. There's a planet called Qumriyad, and it is a Muslim planet, and they have New Mecca on it, and Qumriyad got a new prophet, and the new prophet was very violent. The hegemony was like, who's the nearest person that we can get to deal with this? And it just so happened to be like Kassad on a not like battle like ship, like it wasn't designed.
He had like 30 guys with him.
Yeah, and they were like, you need to go and deal with this, but no nukes. Like you can't, no nukes. And he's like, God damn it, because the new prophet has taken a bunch of people like captive, and unless he gets what he wants, he's gonna kill them all, and Kassad has to...
Yeah, didn't he have the head Gemini?
Yeah, he had some hostages. I reread it this morning.
Kassad is like, he broadcasts a message saying, listen, you either give us the prophet and you stand down, or I'm gonna deal with stuff. And he's also like, also, I too am Muslim, and I do not think this is what our religion was teaching us. I think this is really violent, and I don't think this is cool, my fellow Islamic brothers and sisters. While this planet isn't as like technologically advanced as some of the other planets in the hegemony, they still have like almost like comm links, like they're able to tap into everything. And Kassad uses this as a way to blow up the prophet's brain.
Oh, no. What he does is there's some kind of a satellite that's not designed for combat above head, but it can shoot a little laser, right?
Little.
And the thing is, all of these insurgents or uprisers or whatever, they have logged in. So they're logged in. So he knows exactly where they are. So he has this satellite shoot little tiny laser at all of their heads, and he kills like 2/3 of them in a moment, like that.
Yeah, and they just like poof, dead. And a spray of blood, I believe it's described.
It is, because you get the prophet, the point of view of the prophet on the TV, and like in the middle of him being about to be like, execute the hostages, his brain just explodes. And it's literally on TV for like 2 minutes before people shut it down. That brought Mr. Kassad some press.
Notoriety. Some notoriety.
So, there's two things we should talk about here, or we need to talk about. One is that it's not really a problem if you take this moment in the story on its own. But in the larger bibliography of Dan Simmons is super Islamophobic, and it gets really bad in later books. It's in Ilium, there's a global caliphate that kills all of the Jews and then actually creates black holes to kill them and then sends time-traveling cyborgs to kill Jews.
Oh my God.
He's really Islamophobic. There's also one about how like Obama's policies were going to lead to a global caliphate. So he is insanely Islamophobic, really. Again, in the context of this story, it's not too bad, especially because, like, you know, Dan Simmons in general is not a fan of religion. Like, the whole things that happen with the Catholic Church later in Hyperion are not particularly nice to the Catholic Church, but it is worth mentioning as a bit of a problem.
And it wasn't something I picked on the first time I read this, because Kassad is Muslim and he is presented very positively, and it isn't the planet of Qumriyad that's the issue. It's more just the prophet. So like it's there, but you really like, I think you really would have to couch it in the context of Simmons' whole, and it does put it, when Will told me this, it did put it in a different perspective. And maybe when he wrote this book, because it was before those other ones, he wasn't as Islamophobic, and maybe he fell prey to what a lot of people did after 9/11.
Then also, it's one of these things where it became more acceptable to be Islamophobic in atheist circles than it used to be. There's this, to go off topic for a minute, I'm very atheist, but there's this weird strain of atheism that's very Islamophobic, and they couch their Islamophobia in atheist terms. So they'll go after, you know, Islam much harder than they would other religions, and they exoticize it a lot, and they mix it with stereotypes about, you know, the
Orientalism.
Thank you. You do have a master's.
Literature.
So that is an issue, I think. But again, taken within this novel, specifically because Fedman Kassad is himself Muslim. I think he's atheist, but he's culturally Muslim. It's more understandable. And also, this battle is actually a really good encapsulation of this point in warfare. And that's one of the things I really love about this story, is it kind of world builds a lot how warfare has changed since Hegara, which is when they left Earth. Did you want to say something, Katie?
I was going to ask you, do you think that's more a majority, the idea of atheists being so Islamophobic, being mostly Americans that harbor that? But then I thought about UK and stuff and all the stuff going on in North Europe, so never mind.
Well, you know what it is that a lot of atheists are culturally Christian, and they don't seem to realize that their idea of religion is Christianity. Like, specifically, they don't realize that there are unique things about Christianity. Not all faiths have one God you're supposed to follow. Not all faiths have a book that tells you what to do. That was actually very weird for the Romans when they encountered the Jews, is that it's an unusually literate and legalistic religion. And, you know, there's also the fact that there's only supposed to be one God. All these things, atheists who were born culturally Christian, and I am culturally Christian even if I am not, it's something where they're not able to really filter out their racism from their, like, they think because we awoke from one type of brain wiping, we are now free from all types of brain wiping, and it's not necessarily true. You can still have racist beliefs embedded in your atheism. Yes. And I think it's a problem.
The reason I'm thinking America, it's because America is greatly Christian. So I was thinking too broad at terms rather than more into the subject of that. And then the second thing I was going to say was that I really enjoyed. So they kind of give you a little itty bitty little tidbit of how dangerous the weapons are in this future when they mention at the beginning of this, not even in his story, but in the previous part where they're in the bar, he has something called a death wand. Yeah, and apparently it's super hard to like control and have mastery of. We later learn Fenmod Kasad is apparently stellar with all this stuff. But anyway, the weapons in this future are so extraordinarily dangerous that I honestly, truly don't know how they haven't wiped all each other out.
Well, that's what's fascinating is that that's a lot of the world building Simmons does. I'm going to talk about this part because
you go ahead. I
love my military history.
You go, babe.
Well, and very quickly before we do that, one thing I really love about the way Simmons has created the world is that there's a slightly pulpy edge to it all of like pulpy sci-fi.
Yeah.
And that's so important because he's not slavishly devoted to hard sci-fi. Is this possible? Is this not? He's like, you know what? It's fun to have lasers. We got lasers. But at the same time, on a societal level, he plays out the ways that warfare would change. So because they have all these powerful weapons and because old Earth was so ravaged by war, now they have the code of what they call New Bushido, which is basically no more total war in the sense of mobilizing the entire population to war and all targets are fair game. But now we fight very small battles between professionals with very clear rules of engagement. That's the New Bushido. We don't kill civilians. It's just we achieve the objective and we don't. And this is possible at this stage because most of what the hegemony is dealing with are insurgent groups. There's like a small rebellion that he was originally fighting on, and then you have this one at Quam. Rom? It's Quam, right?
Quam?
Yeah, the planet that the new California...
Someone made a comment. So people often watch our Iron Widow video and think when Will says, I'm going to forget and butcher everyone's names, that it's because they're Chinese. No. He just called Kumriad Quam.
You are like an encyclopedia of words, Maria. You tell it as if you wrote it yourself and it's absurd. He and I are just like struggling, slapping at the top of the water. Like just...
Okay. Right, so the uprising in Quam. So at this point, the hegemony can do this because...
Yeah, the hegemony. The hegemony is what I was going to say earlier.
All right. So at this point, the hegemony can do it correctly because they have access to the Farcaster, so they're the only ones who can travel quickly between certain worlds. And also, it takes like 10 years to get to another world through because of time dilation. So at this point, there's no really widespread warfare. And that leads up to the change that happens on Briseus.
The Battle of Brescia.
Brussels sprouts.
It's Brussels sprouts. Brescia is a planet that was about to become part of the hegemony. They were getting to the point where they were going to get their Farcaster, but they're like just an outback world. And everyone is monitoring the ousters because like they exist. And there was this issue where like there was a group of what they thought was a cluster, and the cluster are where people live. So they thought it was just like a group of like an ouster city floating by and heading on a trajectory. Because like the ouster cities just like they orbit things. So they're always moving. Like they're not stationary. So they thought it was just an ouster city cluster going by, and then last minute it changed route and it started going for Brescia, and everybody's like, oh shit, the ousters are attacking. And the ousters, they fucked up Brescia. They fucked it up real good. Do you want to describe Kassad's adventures on Brescia? Yes, you go, Will.
I was telling them before we started that I kind of almost, for a cold open, wanted to shave my beard except for my mustache and then get aviators and then come in playing like Ride of the Valkyries or Fortunate Son. Like some really because that's the feeling I got from this at points. But okay, so Brescia, the ousters start a total war, again, in a way that the New Bushido has not allowed, and where it's sort of like nowadays, it's been like, 60 years since there's been a large ground combat between major powers. Not since like Korea or World War II has that happened. And so most of our military is now geared toward anti-insurrectionist actions. And what happens is that the hegemony is sort of like that. And now they're meeting another major power in a ground conflict, in a total war of just scorched earth. 70,000 of them land. Within weeks, they're dead, and they have to bring in 100,000 more, and soon they're dead, and there's going to be 200,000 more after that. And where some of the people aren't really able to handle this brutality and what this means for the new Bushido Code, Fedman Kazad's a badass, and he grew up in the slums, and he's like, whatever. He's called the Butcher of South Brescia. At the height of the battle, when the ousters are finally being pushed back, he finds a mystery again, and she comes to him, and they like, with lasers flying above. And what this does is two things. One, it really solidifies Fedman Kasad's character as all about war. Like, this entire story is about his relationship with war and violence, and specifically how it ties in with this mystery woman. And secondly, it really sets up the ousters as a threat, because we knew that they were coming towards Hyperion, that's what really started this story off, but we didn't really know a lot about them, and we didn't really have an understanding, and now we know, okay, these are a real threat, and this is what's coming later in the story to Hyperion.
The best part of this is he survives the entire campaign basically unscathed. After, like, they win and everything is fine, he accidentally trips a mine or something, like a hidden explosive.
A bomb.
A building comes down on him, and they basically have to put him, like, they put him on a space hospital ship. And so there's a couple of things. Number one, Fedman Kasad now has a terrible reputation. It's like Geralt in The Witcher, where, like, you did too much and now people are scared of you. And so Maynard Gladstone is like, just put him on the ship. It'll take like 8 years or 18 standard months to get here. By the time he gets here, he'll be fine, and they'll probably have moved on. So he gets resuscitated, and like they're healing him up, and then he wakes up, and there's a medical lady there. And so this was the part on my first read through where I started really getting interested.
Yeah, I was kind of like picturing the old DBZ Goku in a healing tank vibe when they were like, they regenerated him from near death and, or pretty much death. And so then, like, he wakes up and he can barely speak because he's just, like, in fugue from the sleep. Plus the amount of physical therapy that was being described that you'd have to go through. Anyway, and then literally 5 seconds later, wha-bam! We've just got another attack going on.
It's him having this nice conversation with the nurse, and then, like Katie said, wha-bam, ousters attack, and the hospital room is like, and there's this one great description where he's trying to figure out what's happening, and there's like a break in like the wall, and he's like, there's this spider with weird non-articulated arms trying to get through the hole, and then he realizes it's the nurse's fucking head, and it's her hair, like, going, like,
wasn't that sick?
And you're like, oh no. And again, this is one of those moments where, like, Simmons is a master of slapping you when you least expect it, because you're in a hospital. He's getting healed. The lady makes a comment of like you've asked this question like 100 times. Head floating, and it's just so like violent.
It's overtly insane how much, like, he has main characteritis. It's because he survived things he truly should not have. So there's like no air. Space is encroaching upon inside of each of the rooms. And yet he like grabs a military dude's headgear, can barely fit into the suit. And he's like, I'm going to try to survive as long as I can off of the minimal air in this thing. It's like watching Vin Diesel in Riddick. It's because the types of survival techniques he utilizes is insane.
It's great. And the way he writes the action here is really good. It's really fun.
It's very good.
Like Katie said, it's kind of like Chronicles of Riddick meets Die Hard. So he has a limited amount of air left, and he knows that, the ousters are used to zero-G combat in a way he isn't. So he sets up booby traps with like the hospital equipment to cut them open with like surgery lasers. And then he gets on one of their ships, and he goes into one of their suits, and then he like ships himself off down onto Hyperion, which was the planet that they were over. I kind of skipped over, but it is really a fun action scene, and it's great stuff.
He commandeers a ship that he doesn't know how to fly.
And it looks like a squid. I was kind of picturing like a giant version of the Matrix squids. Anyway, he jumps on this ship, and I love that it actively says how many things he knows how to fly and drive, but then he's like, I have no idea what's going on. So he just slaps buttons and it's just wildly doing things and it works out.
And he ends up, and this is one of the greatest, it's such a good scene, and I was looking up scenes that stood out in the Hyperion cantos to people, and somebody was literally like, Cassad in the squid barreling to Hyperion, because he breaks the atmosphere in a ship that's not supposed to. And there is, like, it does have a way that it could have survived it, but he finds it too late. And so, like, his skin's burning. Like, he's just barreling through the ship's turning hot, molten red.
Steaming to death.
Cooking. And crashes. But then he wakes up, and he's in a nice, airy room. And there is a woman. And it is mystery.
And they have sex.
And he realizes she can talk now. And he's like, yo, what's your name? And she's like, well, I have this name or this name. Which one do you like better? And the name he picks, and the reason I said it that way is because I don't remember what the other one is. But the name he picks is Moneta. That's the name he likes for her. And Moneta's like, she's on Hyperion. She's chilling. She's got her, like, they have sex a lot.
She speaks like this in the audiobook.
I do not like her.
I hate the audiobook.
I hate the way she's voiced in the audiobook.
It sounds kind of like she had like laryngitis and she's holding her throat as she speaks. And I appreciate the attempt on the narrator's part to try to sound sultry, but it didn't
Men
work.
should never do female voices. I'm sorry. It's not, I hate it every single time.
She also just has a weird accent. Like, I'm like, where are you from, Moneta? This is odd.
Yeah, that was weird as well.
Yeah, and so what she explains to him, because he's like, you've been in my dreams for years, and she's like, yes, your past, my future, we are going in opposite directions of each other. And he's like, oh. And she basically says, like, this is the second time.
And he says that this is a very dreamlike state, which I also like. It's because it explains why he's not, like, asking a ton of questions about why he's there, how did he survive, who is she, where are they, all this stuff. And he's, like, in this very dreamlike state where he's, like, not quite sure if it's all real or not.
And then he wakes up one day after sex, and Moneta's, like, got these, like, metallic sheet things, and she's like, here, put this on, and she throws it on him, and it, like, attaches to his skin and basically creates a reflective bodysuit. And she's in one as well.
I was imagining The Matrix, the scene where he touches the mirror.
And, it, like, you can still see when her nipples get hard, which was a description Simmons decided to make sure you knew.
Here's a question I have for you guys. Again, between us, 2 bachelors, 1 masters.
3 bachelors.
The masters is like the
4,
level up from
4
it.
bachelors.
4 bachelors, 1 masters. Is there a way, and remember, we're drawing on all of literature here, to describe nipples in a way that isn't weird and always seems like the author has a thing for them?
Let me think. Give us a sec. Wait a second.
It's always weird and male gazy.
Her nipples were pert.
I don't like it. I don't like it. It's gross.
Jacqueline Carey goes the route of never calling the thing, and I don't like that either. It's like the I don't know. There have been times that have done it well.
The pointed tips of her breasts, the triangular protrusions of the very ends of her flesh shacks on her chest.
The sensitive bundles.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Of nerves. She chewed on the sensitive.
Ugh.
No.
Here's what I think of when you say that. She chewed.
That's like a calf.
Yeah, that's how you chew. You chew with your molars. That would be hilarious, though, if you were like, why are Hyperion videos so goofy?
I don't know, and it's so good. Like, guys, this is great literature. Like, don't let us make you think this is a comedy or we don't like it. This is great.
You chewed that like a camel chewing cud.
Ladies.
Did that do it for you? Let us know in the comments below.
Please don't.
Anyway, so it's this very, like, ethereal, sexy times, and then Moneta's like, the ousters have landed. We have to go deal with them. And he's like, I don't want to. I just want to stay here with you. And she's like, the enemy is always important, Cassad. You have to go deal with this. And he was like, okay. So they go out and he sees, like, the landing parties and they're everywhere. And then, but he realizes everything is frozen and the Shrike's there. And the Shrike's just standing there and he's like, and she's like, it is the Lord of Pain. We're going with him. And you get the idea that Moneta works for the Shrike. She definitely seems chummy with him, and he, like, doesn't walk. He just moves, and because at one point Cassad's like, why is no one moving? And she's like, he has stopped time for us. And there's this moment where Cassad realizes that if you look long enough, a person's eyes will blink. The bird's wings will flap, but if you just look at it momentarily and you move on, it looks like everyone's frozen.
And specifically, a bunch of the ousters have gotten down on a drop ship and have set up camp and are fortified against them. And that's what slowed down.
He immediately has a thing where he's like, this isn't honorable. We can't just attack them like this. The Bushido Code, it's dead, kind of, but I wasn't ready for this. But then the Shrike lets time happen again. And there's this moment where the ousters look up, they see the Shrike, and then the Shrike just whoops in a different spot and just guts takes down ousters
anime style
blade fold. You imagine the blood spurting, and it's this epic battle sequence. Moneta kicking ass, taking names, and then Cassad's I guess I gotta join in, and he does this fantastic movement where he gets this one guy, he throws a bomb in a tank, and then by the time it goes off, he's gone away.
I believe specifically when he changes his mind from the Bushido Code to full-on chaos, he's I'm kind of turned on by the carnage. So that's also a very important characteristic that we're given, is that he's hungry for war and violence.
And this is something given to you a little way earlier, because literally him and Moneta, when they first had sex, they had it on top of that knight they killed. There's a part where he's his one leg is pressed up to the cold, dead leg of the knight, and the other leg is warmed by Moneta, and you're oh, you had sex next to a corpse. And that comes into play here because they decimate, just instant decimate, slaughter the dropship party of ousters. And they're basically and then some of them are leaving, and he was we gotta get them. Moneta's no, let them take the message back. And he's damn bitch, you hard. And then while the Shrike is in the background, they start going at it ooh-wee. It's the horniest they've been in a while, despite their weekend long sex fest.
They still got the silver bodysuits on of armor death.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention that. So she puts on this little body armor thing, we said, the liquid metal thing, but he too is wearing one, and it makes them almost invisible to everyone else. And it also allows Fenmod Cassad, while he's wearing it, to control time somewhat.
When they touch each other, the suits mesh so that their skin is touching and not separated. So they start going at it
You gotta build that scene, Maria. Think pile of corpses, on a bloodstained, dirty ground. And they're just he whipped it off, she whipped it off, she's bloody, they're sweaty, and they combined.
Before entering her warm slit.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So gross.
But anyway, while they're going at it, he starts having visions of just a galaxy in flames, just this battle of all these ships shooting at each other, coruscating lights. It's the beautiful destruction, right? A bouquet, a banquet, a ballerina. Not a ballerina. What is it called?
Ballet.
I knew it was a B word. Yeah, so that's what he's seeing while this is going on. And I'm going to let Maria explain the next part, because it requires a certain eloquence and specificity that I don't feel comfortable with.
Excuse you, I might also...
I don't feel comfortable with this kind of specificity. If you would like to
unveil this moment to our... becoming... Okay, I've got this.
Unveil this to our listeners.
Go, Kate.
Why don't we go together? Let's do it together.
I don't want to.
No, not you. Maria.
Nobody's here for you, Will.
Okay, so I'll set the scene. We're talking about what's happening in this moment, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have entered the scene. Pile of corpses, as I said. Sex. The slapping of balls. But while this is happening,
and he's having
so is something else.
Visions.
Yes. He's having the visions, and he comes to...
Parts of Moneta are shifting. All of a sudden, her boobs are no longer soft and fleshy, but there is metal there. And then her eyes glow, the multifaceted red glow. Her face becomes angular and hot. And all of a sudden, the woman he was having sex with is the fucking Shrike. Literally to the point of a vagina dentata
that has
of metal.
Whole bunch of and he feels it. He feels his member. And he freaks out and he's like, wha-bam. Oh, no. Wait, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let me get into this. Let me rewind a little. So before he pulls out, what happens is, as he's having sex with her, as the overwhelming urge to continue. He can't seem to leave. There's a magnet inside of her punani pulling at the magnet inside of his. It literally says, and for our viewers, I'm going to attempt to use different metaphorical language. He wanted to leave her body, but he continued to swim amongst the metal over and over again. And finally, when he reached exaltation, he sprayed all over the place, essentially. There is a lot of liquid happening.
It literally says, like, he's trying to pull away. Like, he's literally trying to get his body parts out of the Shrike's way, but he can't stop his hips from bucking. Like, that's literally a sentence. He could not stop his hips from bucking because the orgasm had already taken him into its hold. As he actually does pull himself away from the Shrike, he's losing chunks of skin. He's getting shaved by all of these blades, and he ejaculates. You can cut that out.
He reaches exaltation.
On the dead head of an ouster and the Shrike itself. And you're sitting there like, Kasa.
Wow, this really took a weird turn. Like, this is like some alpha omega level requirement of seed being spread. Yeah, so it's kind of a little strange and hypnotic. And it almost made me wonder though, right? So this part I really was confused. Did the Shrike, well, first of all, right, we have the question, is the Shrike her? Is she the Shrike? And are they one? And if so, man, the Shrike has good taste in men, maybe?
Or very specific kinks.
And there's a beautiful moment as he's pulled away, and after he finishes,
a beautiful moment.
Yeah, I love the description of it. So after he's, exalted everywhere, he looks at the Shrike, and the Shrike is turned back into Monetta, except the eyes are still red, and the mouth is full of blade teeth. And she says to him, I have the cloud reader open. Okay, if you could do that, just because I had a sight with it open, but it was...
She smiles, and he sees sunlight glint on rows of metal teeth. Kasa, she whispers, and it is the sound of sand scraping against bone. Kasa tears his gaze away, struggles to his feet, and stumbles across corpses and burning rubble in his terror to be free. He does not look back. That is a nice description, though. Sand scraping against bone.
It's beautiful. What it is, that mouthful of teeth, and it's so great.
I can hear it. I can hear that kind of non-vocal. Yes, like a hiss, right? Mm-hmm. So, by the way, guys, perfect moment to reveal.
I knew you were going to do this.
Awesome drawing. Here's my Shrike.
Oh, I love it.
And
it's Big Bird meets the Shrike.
Yes, and here is the Shrike's other persona.
So, Katie's right. The question because that's it. Well, congratulations. The soldier's tale. He had sex, and then the lady he was having sex with turned into the Shrike. Congratulations. And
then afterwards, very quickly afterwards, everyone's like, "Oh my god, what are you going to ask the Shrike for when you get there?" And he's like, "I'm not going to ask him for anything. I'm going to kill him."
Him and Monetta.
I mean, look, he was swindled. He was catfished.
He was catfished. This is a sci-fi story.
He was absolutely catfished, but he was catfished by the Pain Lord on another planet, and instead of using Tinder or Bumble or Grindr, what happened was they used the great AI
simulations,
the All Thing Technocore.
Yeah, they used the All Thing instead of Tinder to catfish Fenmon Kassad.
To be fair, All Thing is probably a Norwegian dating app.
Anyway, so yeah, you're left thinking, was that a separate person? But if it was, how does that work? Did he literally have this whirlwind sexual romance with the Shrike the whole time?
And also, what was the motive there? It's because Monetta kind of tells him you're ideal. It's because you are so bloodthirsty. But ideal for what? And also when they were having sex, I'm sorry, replace that with having coitus. She harmed him. Now, does that matter, though, that she harmed him? Did she only mean to harm him? Or get caught up in the moment herself or itself? Or did, she not care that she harmed him? I'm a little confused as to, why the Shrike wants him. For what purpose? Why did they share that moment together?
He asked her about the battle he saw in his mind. The question was, is he going to be a big player in that battle.
And I guess is yes.
Oh, there's a cooler moment that I totally forgot. Afterwards, he sees a glimpse of the Tree of Pain.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
A giant tree of blades that the Shrike puts people on, and they suffer eternally on there. That's why he's called the Shrike. And so afterwards, everyone is like, okay, but if the Shrike is moving backwards through time, that's the future for us. Did you see one of us on the tree? And he goes, yes.
And he won't tell them who, which is such an ominous but delicious way to end, because that's literally how, because the tale ends after he walks away from Moneta Shrike, and then you get him talking with everybody else. But what a way, like, one of these guys, you know, as a reader already, is going to end up impaled on the Tree of Pain. And it's just, like, at this point, you're already developing favorites, which of the characters you like, which of them annoy you, who you're attached to.
I wonder if he saw himself. But if he did, he would have reacted differently, I would have thought. So maybe it isn't him.
We will see.
What's also interesting is, again, the way that Simmons does it is really nice, because this layers onto what we know beforehand to give us more information on the world and the story. And from what I understand, some of what happens here is going to come in the other tales. Not just like some of the mysteries, but like Bressius is going to come back in another person's story. And so I really like the way that it really is a mosaic novel, in that each of these tales give you a little bit of a different piece. They're not just random anthologies.
Yeah, there was a lot, like, you can really feel the care and thought. Also, he's obsessed with pinning things to trees. Like, between Father Duray and the Shrike's Tree of Pain, if there's another tree where somebody gets hurt on a tree, I'm calling it out again. But I really like this gentle violence that he presents, this quiet violence. And I personally, right, try to pursue that in my own writing, as you guys know. It's scarier. Just like true horror is, right? It's because it's understated. So I really like his style in this. It's really, really, seriously, guys, you should go check it out.
I love the way he writes. It's like slightly bombastic, but still concrete and subtle. I really can't say enough things. It's interesting because I was saying to a friend that it's kind of hard to talk about these books compared to the bad books, because it's always easier to say what's going wrong rather than what's going right with the story. Yeah. And I noticed that in our first episode is that, like, we had a little bit less analysis than we do normally. So for this one, I tried to bring that up a little bit and really try to gear you guys into like what's really good about this story and about how Simmons writes.
For me, and we've already mentioned this before, the world building is so tight, and there's so many pieces that on the second read through are just even better than the first time, but he does it in a flawless way where by this point in the story, you're being world builded too, but it's not like hitting you as if it's world building. You're just experiencing the world and the characters. And the next one is going to have a lot.
Oh my God, I know. It's stellar. You guys are going to absolutely love it.
I was not expecting, like, I can see on Katie's face how much she loves the next tale. And I was not.
Of course I would.
I was not expecting that.
I am in love with it so far. I am absolutely in love with it. I love his tone. I love what he says. I love the multifaceted metaphors he's laying out. It's this next tale I'm actually going to be taking quotes from, and I'm going to share them. It's because it is rich, lovely literature.
So overall, I loved this one. I thought it was really good. I'm excited to see the next one, especially since Katie says that there's like some really interesting language stuff going on there. Hopefully you guys are enjoying these videos as well. I know that most of you guys came here for more of like a young adult fantasy type of a vibe, but we're all sci-fi nerds, so this is what's up. But definitely read along if you'd like.
Please do.
And we're also wanting to cover a couple of different types of things, not just the same old stuff. Because maybe, you're going to find some gems. We don't always want to just cover things that need some work on them.
But guys, if you had to rank, so Katie, it sounds like you would put them on the same level, but if you had to put which one you like better,
well,
for you personally, what are your, not necessarily
Priest Tale. Priest Tale, absolutely.
Priest Tale, then Soldier's Tale?
It's a more finished product in a different way. It has a more resounding finale.
Okay, Will. And again, this isn't which one's better, it's which one's your favorite.
Well, but my favorite is the better one. Like, I can't do that. Like my favorite one is the one that's better, but the one I enjoyed more was The Soldier's Tale. While The Priest's Tale, I think, works better as a short story. In certain ways, The Soldier's Tale actually functions more as like
Part
a
of a
pacing. Yeah, it's almost less of a singular story, whereas like The Priest's Tale could be in any short story anthology. The Soldier's Tale very much belongs to this part in this novel.
Yeah, The Priest's Tale is very Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, very much so. And then Heart of Electricity.
So you would say Priest's Tale, then Soldier's
Priest's Tale, then this one.
Thank you guys for watching this. Thank you guys for subscribing and the engagement. Like, I had to like kind of persuade Will to host the last Hyperion one and not do some of the other ones that probably would have gotten.
Guys, it takes me 8 hours to edit each of these videos. Hit the fucking like button. Thank you very much.
For Will, because he does. Me and Kate show up, we record, and we go to bed. He wanted to edit like some of the other ones we'd recorded lately, and I was like, no, do Hyperion. I knew we wouldn't get a ton of views on the Hyperion videos, but the comments that we have gotten, because we posted the first one today, and so just the comments and like people being like, I want to read it as well, along with you guys, or people like being excited about it, and just...
We have a lot of elementary school kids apparently who are leaving comments, according to Maria's voice.
Anyway, it's been great, and watching you guys...
It's been great. We really do appreciate you guys and the comments.
It's nice. It's because we did this as mostly, well, it was Will's idea, and then we are just like, we just wanted to have fun and create something. So it's just nice to see some people actually enjoy it.
All right. We love you guys. Parasocial relationships. Peace out.
All right. Bye.
Maria's too busy on her phone to say that she
likes
you guys.
Guys. I love you, my parasocial babies.
She doesn't care about you at all. That she just showed
my
her
boyfriend's on the way.
Look at her bagging. I have a boyfriend.